we're going to start with the Wideband Tympanometry webinar about how to use the Titan for research purpose and how to use Excel in combination with that. First, let's introduce myself to those who don't know me yet. My name is Jos. I live in Denmark. I'm originally from the Netherlands, and at Interacoustics my role is to be involved with training, and I have been very much involved in the development of Titan with the Wideband Tympanometry. What will we cover today? We have two main topics. One is what is the Wideband Tympanometry research license, and during that we will look at how to set up the protocol in Titan so that it supports exporting to research files. Then we will show how to check if the Titan is configured correctly with the correct license. I will mention something about keeping a logbook. Is that necessary or not? And I will mention a few things about faulty measurements. Then we will go over to Excel and look at how we can get started with our Excel file that we created for analyzing the research files. I will simply demonstrate most of the things, give some tips, and I hope that at that point there will be more questions about how to use it in the best way. So let's get started. First, what is the research license? And to understand that, we need to look at how is the license structure of the Titan. Now, most people know that with Titan we can do many different measurements: OAE, ABR, infant screening, and tympanometry. And if we look at tympanometry module, then it is sold in three configurations: screening, diagnostic, or clinical configuration, and this basically defines what tests become available on your Titan. If you have a diagnostic or clinical Titan, Wideband Tympanometry can be added to that, so there is two more tests related to Wideband Tympanometry. And if you have Wideband Tympanometry, you can add on top of that the research license. Now, the research license is basically an option in the protocol setting which allows you to save measurements to a research file. Now, here we see that the protocol is selected to save measurements to the research file. There is a folder indicated where the files should go. So what happens is that for each measurement that you perform, in that folder a file is created. We have made available an Excel file, and with the research license you can use this Excel file to import these files, and you get an overview and we can have a look at the data. For some people it doesn't work straight away because they find out that they might have a wrong license. Basically, if you set up a protocol with this option, save measurements to research file checked, then perhaps you notice that no file is appearing at the location that you have set up. If this is the case, that is simply the proof that the license on your Titan is configured incorrectly. To solve that for you, the easiest thing to do is that in the Titan suite you go to the menu, you select Help, you click on the About, and that will pop up a window, and in that window there is a license button. You click on the license button and another pop-up will appear which shows the licenses for all the modules. If you copy the current license from the tympanometry module and send that to us, then we can immediately recognize from that license if the research option was included or not, and we can send back a different license to have it included. In case you communicate with the serial number of your Titan, then you should mention the serial number that is mentioned in this window. The serial number mentioned here is a different serial number than mentioned on the label outside on the Titan. So for the licenses on Titan, this is the number that is the important number. Good. I mentioned a logbook. Why would we need a logbook? Let me show you an example of some research that took place in the US. This is just a part of the folder that contained all the data. There were in total 450 measurements in the folder, I believe. And if we now zoom in on a small part of this, I just pick a row of 5 consequent measurements. Then what we see with the from the file names is we can see at which date the measurements took place and exactly at which hour and minute and second it took place. So in these files there is of course data that tells us if it was the right ear, if it was the left ear, to which patient or client did this measurement belong. There is a birth date, and so there is some identifiers, but still it could be that this first measurement is the first attempt on the right ear, and then within a minute there is an attempt on the left ear, there is another attempt on the left ear, and another attempt on the left ear, and then again the right ear is tested. And the question is now, which of these files do we need to keep for our research? Because usually it's only one measurement on the left ear and one measurement on the right ear that we keep. If it is not the last measurement of the ear that has to be kept, then people need to keep a logbook to keep trace of which files need to be included. If you always keep the last one, then it's relatively easy within Excel to filter out and to hide or delete the earlier measurements on the same ear of the same patient. Avoid faulty measurements. What do I mean by that? I want to show you an example on the screen here. On the right hand side we see a correct measurement, and on the left hand side we see an incorrect measurement. And where I want you to look is here at the bottom. You can see the curve at 226 Hertz, and if you look at the correct size side, then it shows much more peaky. Then on the left side here we see that it is much more smooth. The problem with the measurement on the left is that the measurement was stopped manually by pressing the stop button in the Titan suite. What happens during the measurement is that on screen you see not 100% of the data. There is so much data that during the measurement we display only 25% of it. After the measurement is done, the full data is handled and the screen is updated. If you press stop, basically all the rest of the data is ignored, and then your final result will depend on only 25% of the data, which causes that it appears as if it is smoothed very much. In research, this means do not use the stop button, because you will corrupt the measurement. This is just to avoid extra work and confusion afterwards, but we can recognize if the data was corrupted or not. So our Excel program will automatically ignore corrupted files. I'm going to do a measurement, and you will see during the measurement you will see that the data is slightly different than after the measurement. So the measurement is now complete, but we are still handling the data. Also, when you have the research function checked on, then the data handling takes longer, because we are writing a file with raw data, which is a much bigger amount of data, and therefore it takes a few seconds before the screen is updated. I will now do the same measurement again, and I will press the stop button just when we are almost at the end. So now I pressed stop. The screen updates very quickly. There is still a data file written away, but we can see this is an incorrect measurement, and it should not be used. When starting to work with Excel, I've had quite a few questions from users that couldn't get the file working. Most often it is because macros are not enabled by Excel. That's a security setting. Typically what happens if you open Excel and the system is showing warnings. So here we see a warning just above all the data, and so here it is isolated. If you now press options, then in the options it gives a pop-up. In the options you can choose enable this content, you can press OK, and now the file will work for this time. Now if you get tired of pressing this options button each time you use the file, then you can open the Trust Center. You do that at the bottom, left bottom of that pop-up, and in the Trust setting you can find the macro settings, and there you can enable all macros, and it warns you that it's not recommended because it is potentially dangerous code that can run. If Excel didn't open the file, not at all, then that is because in here the top function was selected where it says disable all macros without notification. If that is disabled, then you cannot even open the file, and then you have to go into Excel and change this setting before you even open the file. I think it is time to start using Excel, so I will switch back to my desktop, what you see here is the very latest Excel file that we have created. It is quite different from the file that we have shared in the beginning, much more user-friendly. In the beginning, people had to give special commands with the keyboard to import files. Right now, everything is under buttons, so we can simply start by pressing the button Import 3DT Files. Now, before we do that, I want to mention something about just left of it. It says include graphs and include data sheets. I'll do both so that we can see what it is, and then we say import files. It pops up with a browse folder. This is coincidentally the folder where I keep my files, but let's just select 3 files and then see what happens. The macro is now on its way of importing the files. It is also editing the data and then getting the data into the overview. So the screen is a little bit flashing back and forth. It's now busy with the second measurement, and now it starts importing the third measurement, handling the data, then copying some graphs. Okay, now we have imported 3 measurements in Excel. And the first thing I wanted to tell you is about what does it mean to include graphs and include data sheet. The include graphs is that each column with data gets small graphs which shows absorbance at ambient pressure, at peak pressure, and further down I can jump to the wideband average tympanogram here. Here you can also see the small graphs with the wideband average tympanograms for these things. Having many graphs in Excel slows the program very much. Also, what I did in this case is we included the data sheets. That means at the bottom we can see that we have several sheets, and where it says sheet 1, sheet 2, sheet 3, that is the raw data as it was copied and then edited from the exported files. If there is a reason to keep this data, I don't know. There is maybe more information here than what I show in the overview. So if you're not yet certain if all the information that you need is there, then you could keep some data sheets. But my recommendation is actually not to include the data sheets so that Excel remains reasonably fast. Okay, we have now 3 columns of data. If we now say one of the columns we don't want to keep that measurement, then we need to make sure to delete that column in the right way. Deleting a column is done by clicking on the label on the top, or clicking with the right mouse button, and then you say delete. By doing this, the whole column is removed, and basically the columns to the right of it will move 1 row to the left, and that means that there is no empty columns in the data. As soon as there is empty columns in the data, things will go wrong when we start looking at the overview on the left, which shows averages and so on for all the data available. Let's start over. I delete all the columns. I want to show a full import of all the measurements I had here. That will take maybe a few minutes, but let's see, it's not too many. So what you see me doing is that I select all the files that I want to import in one time. You can select 1 file at a time. You can select as many as you want, so it makes it very convenient. Now, if we now follow the import that is happening, you will see that we still have sheet 1, 2, and 3 from before because I didn't delete them. And now the sheet that is added each time, it gets 1 number higher. We are now at sheet number 6. But after the data is copied, then it is also removed again, and then it will appear with sheet number 7 when it is importing the next data. You will also notice when using this file that if you import without the graphs, it is incredibly much faster. So right now it is relatively slow. Maybe it is also a little bit slower than usual because we are running a few programs together on my computer that all require quite some memory. When I try this offline, then it goes a lot faster also. Maybe it's nice to mention that in case there is a corrupted data set amongst the measurements that you have selected, then at the end of the import it will mention how many files were skipped because of that they were corrupted. So you will always get a message and be notified about if there were errors or not. Maybe I can already mention a few things about what we see on the left-hand side, although the screen is jumping back and forth all the time. The graphs that are in the light blue area, they show the average of the absorbance measurements. Most graphs combine two curves or two situations, the absorbance at ambient pressure and the absorbance at peak pressure, and then the average is shown with standard deviations around it. Below that graph there is another graph that we didn't see yet, but that one is showing the percentiles. So instead of using standard deviation, you can then choose if you want to use, for example, the 10th percentile, the 50th percentile, and the 90th percentile. You can change which percentile you want to see. You can make it from 5 to 95 or what you want. With absorbance measurements, it is most common to work with percentiles, not with standard deviations, because there is a limited range. The absorbance will be between 0 and 1, and that means that standard deviations do not work if you get close to 0 or close to 1. Then it's not an appropriate measure. And therefore also the normative data that is used in the Titan is all based on percentiles. Where are we? Number 80. 2 more to go, and then I will not do this again. Then I will just talk about how to look at this data, how to recognize also measurements that should be excluded from the data set. Oh, there is a question. If you need the latest Excel file, you simply need to ask me. You need to send me a mail. I'm the one that is keeping the latest versions. Of course, I will share it with you also when we're done. Now, the import is now done. The nice thing about having the graphs is that we can browse through relatively quickly and see how different the measurements are while jumping over the different measurements. And then let's go to the very first column. If we look at the first small graph that's in column H, then we see that the absorbance over there is really, really low. Probably this measurement was included by error, or at least the measurement is, if this is a normal study, well, this is not a normal measurement. Probably it needs to be excluded, so I'll delete that column. By deleting that column, we will immediately see that also the averaged data becomes a little bit nicer. The graph on the left had wider standard deviations. Then the next thing I want to point out is that in row 4 it gives us which calibration set is used. Now, if this is a study on adults and you notice that there is a measurement where the calibration set was used that belongs to newborns, then we know for sure that that measurement done with newborns is also a faulty measurement. Remember that Titan has 2 calibration sets. One is used up to half-a-year-old, and the other one is used from half-a-year-old up to old age. And it will label here to which age group the client belonged when the measurement was performed. Now, normally the measurements are done while Titan is opened through a database. it is very important that a database is used. If you do not use a database, you will not get the correct birth date in your research files. Now, even though that people use databases, sometimes maybe something goes wrong, and this is actually what happened in one of the studies from someone that I helped. There were several measurements where the calibration set was accidentally set to newborns before they performed the measurement, and so those also needed to be excluded. So in this case, we delete this one. Good. Now something about the different sheets that we have in Excel. I will quickly delete the data sheets that we don't need. At the moment we have two data sheets. One is called 3DT overview. That is a data sheet created for importing 3D measurements. The other one is the WBA overview. It's for the wideband absorbance measurements that are measured at a single pressure, and most people measure those at ambient pressure. So if you want to import those files, you can do it in this sheet. Principle is the same, it works all the same. The nice thing about having both sheets in one Excel program is that we can compare the data. Of course, there is much more data in the 3D measurements. There is several slices that we can look at peak pressure, at ambient pressure, and therefore the rows used where the data is found, they are created in the same way for the overview of the non-pressurized data, and that means that in this sheet there is a number of rows missing. We can see we are now at row, here we have row 232, that is where our absorbance at ambient pressure stops, and then everything is hidden and we jump to row 1137. My advice is just not to unhide what is in between. That is data that is not available, but in this way, if we want to compare one type of measurement, the 3D measurement to the 2D measurement, we can simply plot the same row numbers in the same graphs. So that's one thing. Yeah. Now the topic about seeing different types of patients. If you see patients with different pathologies, or if you do a normative study and you do a pathology study, then you might want to separate those in different sheets. Now, there's different ways in Excel that you can copy a sheet. Some people, they create a new sheet, they go to the overview, they select all, and then they copy everything over. I select all, I press copy, and I go back to my new sheet and I press paste. So now I have copied everything from the 3DT overview into the new sheet, but this is not the way to do it. I can show you by deleting all the data that I have on this screen. If I say delete, I have deleted the data, and still the graph, which should show the average of the data on this sheet, shows the results from the first sheet. So if you copy in this way, the graphs are not updated correctly. They are linking to the wrong sheet. So no go. I'll delete the sheet and I'll show you how to do it properly. What you do is you use the left mouse, you drag your sheet to a different position, you hold Control before you drop it, and then a copy of that sheet is generated at the position where it's dropped. You can see the name is now changed from 3DT overview to 3DT overview number 2. If I now check in this sheet what happens if I delete the data, delete all the columns with data, delete. Now you can see that also my graph is showing no data anymore, and just to show that now all the graphs are pointing to the right sheet also. So that's why it is important to copy in such a way. Okay, some of you would like to compare the measurements done in research with the norm data that we have available in the Titan suite. If that is the case, then I have all the norm data from the Titan I have in a separate Excel file. I'll show you shortly. It is a file with lots of data. It is for in row 2, we can see it is for all the age groups, and it is different data sets for ambient pressure and peak pressure. Now, this original data comes from proper research, from articles, and the frequency points used by these researchers was not always the same as the frequency points that come out of the Titan. So we had to make a conversion from the data that was available to be usable in the Titan suite, but that's already done here. If we take as an example the column number B, where it is newborns norm data at ambient pressure, this is the 5th percentile, which is mentioned at row number 3. Then for all the frequencies where there is a data point available, there is a number. I can simply select this column, press Ctrl C for copy. I could go back to my other Excel file. The mouse is now placed just behind the graph. Now I need to paste special, paste values, and now I have pasted the 5th percentile, and now let's change the number on top. I'll scroll a little bit down. You can now see there is in column D there is data, and also in the graph it now shows the 5th percentile. If I now adapt the graph to show both this data and also the data from my study, then I can compare the normative data in Titan with the normative data from my study. Let's scroll a little bit down because I never gave you a good view at the different graphs on the left. So here we see on the left, the top graph on the left is the one with the average and the standard deviation, and just below it, it is the different percentiles. And it is in row 14 that I can change percentiles. So if I put 5% there, then automatically the calculations change to 95%. So we can see that the graphs change depending on what I choose. Let's do from 1% to 99%. So we can see that it becomes wider, or 30% to 70%. So this is how you can play with the data and get started with Excel. Yeah, I mentioned earlier that not all the data that is available in the exported files is already used in these Excel files. If there is people that have special needs, if there is different data wanted, for me it is relatively easy to adapt the Excel file and to add a few rows at the bottom, so that then you can just ask me what you need. One person already asked me for something special. They wanted specifically the absorbance, not as it is measured in all detail. They wanted the absorbance with a going average of 1/3 of an octave, and that is why there is at the bottom, and I can jump there by clicking the button there. At the bottom there is also data where the ongoing average is already calculated. Now, if this 1/3 octave ongoing average data is interesting to you, then please contact me and I explain you how this data handling is done. Oh, there is a question I hear. Is it possible to see the gender on Excel? The answer is no. We cannot. Yes, we can put gender as a field, but then you have to manually enter it. I have seen data from someone. They separated female and male data in 2 folders, and they looked at both separately, and it was very interesting to see that there is a small difference on those 2 data sets. So it is absolutely worth looking at, but our export file does not include the gender, so I cannot automatically do this. So that would be manual work. Okay, thank you very much for your question, and I always like to hear that you're in. If you contact your distributor, then they know how to get the research license. Just ask your distributor, and they will make sure that you get it, including the correct license. Is there any plan to make a common research platform database with raw data? I am open for such suggestion. The research world and all the people that are involved is complex, and not everyone likes everyone. So I'm always very careful with sharing data from one to another. But if there is in a particular country the wish to have a platform, I don't mind that we offer a place to maintain that. I hope a little bit that the initiative also comes from the different markets. It is absolutely in our benefit to combine research, particularly on pathologies where it is difficult to collect bigger amounts of data. The problem we had during the development is that we wanted to make learning to make interpretations of absorbance measurements. We wanted that to be easy, and for the different pathologies, we think it requires to show a normative area that fits to a specific pathology. But we were not allowed to implement it because the data sets that would be the base of these normative areas, they were simply too small. And what we see is that the individual research groups, they either need a lot of time to get a sufficiently big population with these special pathologies, or we need to combine it in order to get a appropriate data set to be used as a norm data set for pathology. So we really like the idea. Can wideband tympanometry thesis students contact Interacoustics Academy directly with questions? Well, not just the students may contact me directly. Everyone may contact me directly if it is related to wideband tympanometry research. We like to support that in the best way possible. In principle, yeah, it's just what I was going to say. In principle, you may share my email address, my contact details. You may share my phone number if you like. If it becomes too much work, then I have a few people, of course, around me that are involved with the same that can support also. But at the moment, I'm kind of coordinating everything around the wideband tympanometry research and who is using the Excel files and so on. So any question you can send to me. Good. You have provided the normative data which has been generated from studies conducted. Are you able to direct us to those studies? Absolutely. We have the literature references to those studies. Some of the data sets also are not from published studies, but they are conducted by the same people. They never got to get the article published, but I can send you an overview of where data comes from, what is published, what is not published, and who did it. If there is no further questions, then I'm going to close the webinar for today. I'd like to thank everyone for participating. I hope to talk to you again in the near future. Hopefully also meet you in real life at some point. Thank you very much. Bye bye for now.